Well, good morning, everyone. On this November 22nd, we are happy to have Martha here, who read one of our former ministers, Reverend Annie Holmes' sermon titled Cloaked in a Mantle of Gentleness. So, Lurlee wanted to go first.
I found it extremely interesting and I appreciated it. I did not know Annie, but I learned about her through Michael, uh, and she was a mentor for him. And that's Michael Wheeler, by the way.
Yes. Yes.
And so I really appreciated it, and I thought Martha did an excellent job of reading it.
Thank you. She was a very special person to me, as she was to many. Mm-hmm. And I loved her stories. And as I sort of tasked myself with finding a sermon for this week, I had all these sermons that I had saved and some that had been shared by Sharon. And I went through them, and this was the one, and there are a lot of reasons that just hit me right. It made me cry when I first read it. And I felt, we need something like that now. And I'm glad that I did it. I enjoyed doing it, and it helped bring memories back for me as a kid with my grandma. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, and especially, in this time where families are under a lot of stress, like with the lockdown orders and not being able to meet. And, I think reminding ourselves of how each relationship of a family member to each other is a unique relationship and a beautiful relationship. And yeah, that's primarily what I got out of it. Gemma, you wanted to go next.
Well, I want to say it also affects people that aren't married, that are friends. How do you get your friends involved with your life if they are living, like in Eugene or Corvallis? And we were going to have three friends come down for Thanksgiving, and they decided not to. Yeah. Two of them decided not to because of the COVID thing. And so, we're left to have our own Thanksgiving all by ourselves. So even if we didn't have a family, we don't have our friends either. Yeah. So that makes a big difference. But the sermon was great. I enjoyed listening to it. I don't remember hearing it before, but it really brought me close to Annie, because Annie really took up a lot of her characteristics of her grandma. And we'd go over there and play cards with them, and she knit us a blanket, and she was just that part of her relationship with her grandmother really was infused in her personality, as a young girl. And you could really tell that she, the things that she got from her grandmother really affected her in her life. And you could tell that Annie was really a loving person from that. And I miss her. I really do.
One thing that she did for us also, it was so wonderful. The first couple of Thanksgivings we were here, she would have what was called Orphan Thanksgiving. And those of us who didn't have family, we all showed up with a dish, and that was wonderful. And the other thing that she did do, she had a thing called Crafternoon, which Lucy was trying to resurrect. And we all went on a Saturday afternoon and did whatever project that we were doing, and sat around a table and laughed. And still, it was just after I read that sermon, I realized what Annie had been doing all along. And she provided a lot of extra things that we're all trying to do now with Zoom, which is a very difficult thing to try to do.
She provided the mantle over our shoulders for all of us. Yeah. She really did.
But thank goodness we have Zoom, because if we didn't have Zoom, we wouldn't be in touch with anyone.
Yeah,
it's
right.
True. It's true. Yes, Sharon.
Well, Martha, out of all the many sermons you could have chosen, I think this one was very apropos, particularly at this time. So I commend you for having the insight to notice that. Yeah. The two things that I remember from the sermon is the real value of friendship I was very close to my family. And when I was 5, my father was transferred from Pennsylvania to Tennessee. I started school in Tennessee, and friendships were already established. And I never did feel like I could break into the clique.
Yeah, right.
And so I tried to be a friend to all. But it was later in my life that I found out how friendships really are developed, because it wasn't shared with me as a young child. And then her grandmother teaching her all of the handcrafts, because we had moved from Pennsylvania to Tennessee. There were 500 miles between me and my grandmother. I only had one surviving grandmother. And I believe my father paid for them to make a train trip to Tennessee to visit us. And it was during that time when my grandmother wasn't responsible for all the cooking and taking care of all the guests. When we had visited in Pennsylvania, she was sitting crocheting. And she taught me how to crochet. Yeah. So the other handcrafts were not something that I picked up easily because I was much older. But as a child learning that crocheting, I can still do it, even if I don't know intricate patterns about it. And the final thing was, we had orphan Thanksgivings before Annie arrived.
Oh, okay. That was nice to know.
But she and Billy added the dimension of the games. And I thought that was wonderful, because most of the time we would reminisce at our UUU orphan Thanksgivings and talk about who wasn't present. The games were just so wonderful. I really liked that. So thanks, Martha.
You're welcome.
And where is Glennis? Glennis, thank you for your contributions in choosing the readings, and Michael, the music. Again, you know, it's very significant for me.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
Yeah, for me, you know, I think of the special relationship that children can have with their grandparents, and my brothers both took horseback riding lessons, and I was not interested anymore in like cleaning. I love to ride, but the idea of like cleaning horses and feeding them and brushing, I just hated that. So instead my mother would drop me off at my grandmother's apartment. And when I look back at my childhood, those were some of the best afternoons that we had. She would make me my favorite foods and let me watch cartoons, and we'd have conversations. And you know, and of course, as I got older, as teenagers do, you kind of like start to separate a little bit more. But you know, but I'm so grateful to have had that time with her, especially after she passed. So that's what the service reminded me of. Yeah, Glennis.
I was also reminded of my grandmother, my adoptive maternal grandmother. The other one lived so far away that she wasn't in our lives on a day-to-day basis, but quite frequently my grandmother was my babysitter. And I have to say that she was the one who would play card games with me. She was the one who played outside games with me, and the one who read to me for hours, and I credit her with that big time. She was the one who gave me long division problems when I was having trouble with math. She was the one who would serve high tea to me, you know. This is something that my mother never had time for, especially after my brothers were born. And frankly, my adoptive mother was never one for playing games or reading to children or anything. It was my grandmother that took all that up. And so I will credit her for a lot of the influence that she gave me.
Yeah, that's awesome. JC, I see it real quick before JC speaks. Lois, your first attempt at getting into the room is still up. If you wouldn't mind signing out of that, because if I kick you, you might not be able to join with that account. Yeah.
Kicker,
if I can. I thought I stopped it. Let's
yeah.
see.
And then okay, yeah, other technical stuff. It looks like we're good. JC, go ahead.
Well, one thing I remember just as you started talking about Annie is that I think about her every time I make my bed, which isn't exactly every day, but most days. Because the last thing is to drape the Afghan she made for me when she first came here. I was president. And if you don't think that was intriguing, since Jim was the leader of the group that found Annie, and he and I couldn't talk about that was, but anyway.
Yeah.
But very shortly after she got here, she gave me this Afghan, which is the size of a queen size bed with no drop over the sides. And I was incredibly impressed that with her very own hands, she could, I don't know, crochet. I don't know even how she made it.
She knitted it.
I do think of her, and the way I think of her is what I felt when I realized that she had done this thing for me that took all those hours. Now, of course, she made them for a zillion people. I mean, there could be, I don't know when she stopped, but that was an amazing thing to me, that she worked that long to do that. And I don't know, I didn't put any particular meaning on it, except that I was impressed that she could do that. And yeah, we became very particular friends. She once said to me, "You are just the kind of president every minister wants." That, I gathered, was a great compliment. And so I remembered that along with my pleasure at getting the blanket. So yeah, she was an important person, and to the church. And I'm really glad we had her with us.
That's cool.
She was doing what her grandmother taught her, because I went through the talk afterwards and listed all the ways that she learned about being a friend from her grandmother. And that was doing those things for others out of love and kindness that we sort of miss in this world today a lot. So yeah, thank you.
So we've been joined by a few people since we started. Lois and Connie, I don't know if you wanted to dive in or.
Michael, can you hear me?
I can.
You turned your screen
again. I've had a lot of trouble getting in this morning.
Here.
Well, is it still causing a problem?
Yeah, your other account is still up, but we'll just deal with it.
I can't get to it.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all right.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to turn off my computer. Maybe that'll do it.
Oh, okay. All right. Then just come right back in. Yeah. Good morning, Connie. How are you?
I'm doing well.
I see you have your notepad.
I do.
Yeah.
It's good.
Well, I guess I have a comment about, it doesn't have to be a grandma, but how teaching another person to do something you really love. One of the things that I've noticed about my grandkids is what took me a long time to do it, but to do that with them. Instead of showing them or like including them. A lot of grandmas make cookies with their kids. And that's the thing those kids remember clear when they're 60 years old. And I have grandkids that remind me when we went rock hunting or something, or working in the garden with me. So I really love she brought that out about her grandmother, because and I think like a grandpa that shows a kid how he's working on a car. Mm-hmm. There are just so many ways to show love. And I just, I like the fact that that was brought out in that sermon.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, which was something that I think we all noted with Joe's talk for Father's Day, about the wisdom of fathers, the wisdom of grandfathers. Do you want to chime in, Joe?
Well, that talk that I did was, I can see where it was similar. But one thing that I wanted to mention is you were talking about riding horses, and you didn't want to do some of the horsey things.
Oh, yeah.
And when I was working for the newspaper, every once in a while we'd go out to some person's house to do an interview. And I'd ask the reporter, well, who is this person? Oh, well, some big multi-billionaire socialite. And we get out there and they would show up in their jeans and their work shirt and their boots just covered full of horse muck. They'd been out mucking the stalls. And they would all say, it's one of my favorite things to do.
Oh, geez.
So you missed out.
I guess so.
You just lost out.
The joy of dealing with horse shit. Yeah.
Literally.
I avoided using that word.
Oh, okay. I apologize. Yes, this is church. Yeah. Literally.
Well, to give you a background of why all three of my sons got involved in horseback riding, and Michael, well, we were on a camping trip back to Iowa, back and forth, and we the boys took a trail or horseback ride. I think it was at the what was it? Yes. Devil Tower.
Yeah.
And on our trip, and they didn't experience shoveling, you know what?
Yeah.
They just got on the horse and rode, and so all three of them were very enthusiastic. And Michael was the first one to say, "Hey, forget this." Yep. And then Scott, and then Andrew continued on. And but it was, in Michael's defense, it was he didn't realize what involved at that young age with taking care of horses.
It's true.
Going horseback riding.
And Joe, one thing that I noticed when I started meeting a lot of millionaires was how much of their home maintenance they do themselves, or how many of them would drive like 30-year-old trucks and wear like beat up flannel. It's just utterly amazing to me.
It's normal.
Yeah.
I saw it all the time, and I really just kind of got used to it.
Yeah.
Especially, so I remember I was photographing. I was going out to Barry Goldwater Jr.'s house.
Yeah.
To photograph him, and he knew I was coming. I rang the doorbell, and here comes Barry. He opens the door. He's wearing a pair of jeans, a pair of cowboy boots, and he's bare chested. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Well, I'm out working on the guest house. I'm doing some plumbing." He says, "Let me get changed into a suit." And I said, "No, we're going to start just like this." And we went out, and I shot pictures of him working on his plumbing. And I even have an autographed copy of one of those.
Very cool. Well, let's migrate back to the topic of the service.
May I just say something real quick?
Yeah.
It really all goes together.
Oh, I agree.
It's all talking about family and the genuineness.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, Joe. I wasn't scolding anyone. I just trying to.
What I wanted to say was, so many of us grandmothered from afar, And as someone who lived on a street that was, I think in one sermon I did a long time ago, I talked about my family where we were at 120th and Maple, and my grandparents were at 125th and Maple, and my dad's sister was at 129th and Maples, all on the same street. So much of my time was spent there, even at lunch times, you know, and I remember seeing the original Mickey Mouse silent movie kind of thing. She would have movies when we would stay overnight when my parents would be gone, and just little things like that that I have not been able to do with my kiddos. And there are lots of times that I wish I was closer so I could just pop in and take them to the library or do something with them. And that's a whole different thing, but it was our generation, my generation, that wanted to get out of Dodge of this. And this, I think, is an important thing for a lot of us to think about. I didn't realize just how important it was for all of that extended family to be within. I think our entire extended family was in about a 15-mile radius. And I just wanted to get out of Dodge and change my life. And so I went to California, got married, went to California. And I realized that although I was a pretty good, devoted daughter who took the kids home to see all the grandparents every summer, and my folks came out every other summer, it still was not the same. And so they missed a lot. And so I'm thinking of my grandkids, and we moved out here to be near the Seattle family, but it's still not the same. And then of course with Diane, us becoming her adopted grandmothers and grandpas, you know, they're in Sacramento now, and you know, where she used to be here 3 or 4 or 5 times a year, you know, that's not happening even anymore. So yeah, it's pulling on my heartstrings a lot, although we talk every Sunday. And Leo, the 6-year-old, has now found out that he can call me on FaceTime. And so I hear from Leo intermittently all week. Grandma, I'm at work with Mom, you know, Grandma, I'm, you know, and so it's maybe 3 seconds of a conversation, but that's better than nothing. So that's my 2 cents about that.
No, that's great. Yeah, Glennis, and if I'm missing anybody, you know, flail, so I can see your hands.
It's a lot better than nothing. I find that through this COVID thing, I have a brother that lives in Maine, a birth brother, and I got to know him about 25 years ago, and he and I are very close, but not physically at all. We haven't even seen each other in the last 15 years, but we've been talking FaceTime. And the other brother that was injured in Arizona, we were talking FaceTime. So these are 2 people that I would not normally actually see on Thanksgiving anyway, but I'm going to be able to talk to them along with sisters and other extended family. And the other thing that I wanted to say too was about Annie. I only met Annie once a year ago in July, when she came out here, and she delivered a sermon, and I found her to be everything everybody was talking about. She has this energy that is just like Grandma's. The mantle is there. And even though I met her one day, I could tell just from the energy that she exudes that she's one of these people that is loving and supporting of everyone.
Yeah.
The other thing was that getting back real quick, getting back to my own maternal grandmother, she, once we got TV, which I was 7 before we ever had a TV, but once we got one, she would sit there with me on the couch and poo-poo the advertisements. So it was from her that I learned critical thinking. She would say,
that's funny.
Well, just because it's a picture of a wedge in a shoe, that doesn't mean you're really going to run faster or jump higher.
That's great. Yeah, well, maybe we could hear from somebody who hasn't spoken yet after JC, because I just saw JC's hand go up.
Oh, well, oh, shoot.
Did I throw you off?
Oh, no, it was, yes, the thing I learned from my grandmother, when I would stay overnight with her, or our family would stay overnight, I invariably slept in the room that was right over the kitchen. And grandmother was up early getting ready for breakfast and thing, and coughing like she was gonna die on the next breath. I never smoked because I heard my grandmother suffering, and I didn't see any reason, even at age 7, why I would put myself into that kind of a situation. So yeah, they have their own ways of teaching us.
Yeah. And for anybody who's ever quit smoking, that you know, just don't start.
Yeah, really.
Miss Kim was next, I think.
Well, Kim, did you? Yeah.
Well, growing up, I had a lot of grandmas and grandpas around. I had like 2 sets of grandparents, 2 sets of great grandparents, and actually, so Thanksgiving, it was like when you didn't dare say grandma, or you get a lot of what's going on. Yeah. One grandma, she played the organ at church. And from what I understand, she was really, really good. You can just hum a tune, she would just start playing it.
Wow.
What good. And so I just wish she was here to see me perform the piano, because I kind of fizzled out when I was a kid on playing piano. And but anyway, I really liked all my grandparents and grandmas, and I really miss them all. They all had, you know, their unique ways of doing stuff, and it was really fun to be around them. Grandmas are great because you kind of get away with stuff that you wouldn't get away with when your parents are there. But yet you're still being protected from, you know, they give you that extra cookies. And my grandma they had this candy bowl, and I guess there was fights amongst my brothers and sisters. They all wanted that candy bowl. I think that they went and made one so they each could have one. But this special candy bowl we could get candy out of. I love it.
That's, yeah. What's the old quote of, you know, that children get along better with their grandparents than they do with their parents because they have a common enemy, you know?
Also, I see my nephews interacting with my parents, who are their grandparents, you know, and having a great time. And I started being auntie to my nephews. I take the youngest one out to movies, and apparently he has a ball. He doesn't say a whole lot, but, you know, because I've seen his mom's grandma occasionally, and she goes, "Oh, he talks about how great it is you are. You're so sweet and kind." I'm thinking, okay. So I kind of have a little taste of that too.
Yeah. We guys don't express ourselves maybe as well as we should. So I'm sure he loves spending time with you. How about we do Connie, then Lurlee?
Well, I was going to comment on Kim's the last thing Kim talked about, taking a nephew out. And you know, all of you know, I'm a great believer in being a grandmother. And all of us can be, you know, we pine away about our grandkids living far away, but there's kids right down the block, you know, who need a grandparent. And I'm all for encouraging people to, I think we've all expressed how important our grandparents were in our lives. And we can be that person in another kid's life. We don't have to be their grandparent by birth, but we can fill that role.
Yeah. Lurlee, I know you had something to say, but we haven't heard from Laleen yet, if it's okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does Lilene know she's supposed to talk?
Yeah, she's kind of.
Okay.
She's verklempt, I can tell.
I have so many feelings going on in my body. The hardest one is I realized at a very deep level from that sermon that the oldest relative in my family, and there weren't many relatives involved in me, with me, was my mother. And I didn't have any grandparents, so I didn't really have other adults. My mother was an only child, so no brothers or sisters. So that, at first I started to get really, really sad from that. And then I realized how important, and I've never really said this out loud, Annie was in my world. And so there's two little things that I kind of want to tell you all about. The first involves Gemma. And it's a huge thank you to Gemma for talking me into at least sticking my foot in the UU, because as some of you know, I had never had any church affiliation at all. And being a lifelong lesbian was not really open to much church involvement in my world. And so coming into the UU and meeting Annie and Billy and other very welcoming folks gave me a whole different experience of the idea not only of church, but religion and faith. And, you know, I have found my spiritual world growing since the day I walked into the Unitarian congregation. And I found that my experience with Annie was incredibly important in terms of how I relate and incorporate other people in ideas or creating things that other people can engage in and get things from. And it just seemed a natural sort of transition to moving into doing AEO and, you know, some other involvements in church. But a huge thing that, again, I want to credit Gemma for is that when I got a UU family, and I was very aware I didn't really have any family, and this was pre the current family that I have, Jim and I decided we were going to an all-day workshop. Actually, it was a weekend workshop. And we were going to be doing kind of a drama thing. And we were to choose an aspect of ourselves that we wanted to develop or grow or look at or evolve. And Gemma and I, thank you, bless you for that, dear friend, chose our mothers. Not that we wanted to be our mothers, but we wanted to, and we're right around 40 years old, we wanted to look at how we would grow older and what kind of adults at the age of 70 or 75 or 80 we would be and how we would be different, so that we were able to take the things that we honestly, willingly, openly looked at about our own families of origin, our mothers, and kind of set out a blueprint for the changes and the ways that, you know, that we might grow. And I'm forever grateful, and
Jim, I haven't really said this to you recently, but thank you for companioning me in that journey, because I never could have been the grandparents, never had an older person than my mother in my life if we hadn't done that. And what I learned, from that whole experience was about kindness and gentleness and listening and doing things together. Like my partner and I and the daughter-in-law and all the girls, and every summer we took a 2-week vacation, and it was called Girls Trip. And just having that year after year and doing that bonding and finding myself growing into becoming a grandparent or even an elder in some fashion with these little ones, because my brother was gay and he didn't have any little ones and I didn't have any little ones. And so I'm real grateful for that. And Annie fits into a lot of that because of the many workshops that she also did that gave us a chance to explore ourselves in so many different ways. Yeah. So a lot of mixed feelings for me, but a really good choice, Martha, and thank you. I'm grateful for that one. It was a good time for me to dip back in. Thank you.
And with any luck, she'll, I don't know if anybody sent Annie the video, but maybe we could do that, and hopefully she'll
do that.
Yeah, she'll get to see this conversation. So.
That would be really nice, I think.
Yeah. Well, she hired me.
Yes, she did.
That's how that's how I got to.
Well, so there you go.
To work for.
Full circle, doesn't it?
Yeah. To work for you all. So, Lurley.
I'll make this quick. I grew up with my grandparents. My grandparents had 2 living children, and both of them, my mother and her brother, both divorced. And so my uncle had his youngest daughter was Penny, and she's just 2 years younger than me. And we would go to Grandma's house, of course, or we was in Grandma's house, and we'd be in this big bed. I mean, it was a real big bed where we'd spend the night. And Grandma would come in with her notepad and her pencil, and she'd say, "Good morning, ladies. What would you like for breakfast this morning?" And it was so awesome. And she would write it down, and she'd tuck it in her apron pocket, and she'd go back out. And Penny and I would just giggle. And then she'd bring on a tray our breakfast and enjoy, ladies. Let me know when you're finished and I'll pick the tray. It was a
and leave her a tip.
Right. Seriously. And then Grandpa Hatfield, he would take Penny and I in his Model A. It was not a Model T, but it was a Model A. And we'd always go to, I don't remember if it was Dairy Queen or whatever, and we'd get ice cream. But we would be bouncing around in the back seat. That was before seat belts. And it was just fond memories, really fond memories. And it was, so I grew up not only with my grandparents and my mother, but also my uncle. And so we moved up here to Roseburg because my cousin Dean and cousin Penny were up here. And so I'm surrounded by my childhood family. Mm-hmm. And it was good.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah. And I wonder how much of that intimate or playful relationships that we've had with the older generation is at risk of falling away with modern technology and kind of cultural shifts.
Good point.
Yeah, or how much it stayed. I hear stories like often from like Kim, about the way children play on the playground, and it's every bit as identical to the way that we played on the playground. So maybe as the generations go forward, we're keeping a lot more than we're losing. So
I just saw a video of my grandsons yesterday. They cleaned up all the leaves in the front yard and had humongous piles of leaves. So Karen took video of them jumping off of one of the lawn chairs into the pile of leaves and all the silliness that went on. And I thought, oh my God, these are things that are done for ages. And I'm so grateful that they're having that kind of very simple experience, but they look like they're having a ball.
Right. Outside.
Yeah,
it's
in the front yard with all the leaves.
Yeah, it's so wonderful to like see liveliness in the park, and yeah, go ahead, Kim.
This week, when we had that really lots and lots of wind that one day, my kids at school just had so much fun. My teacher was saying, if it's too cold and stuff out there, you can come in. And so I asked the kids, because it's pretty cold. They're like, no, we're having too much fun. They were just, dancing in the wind, and they shoved all their coats off, and they were just like running around, just having a good time. One kid goes, this is the best time ever. Just blowing in the wind.
So there's hope.
Yeah, we had a tree and they thought that was just cool.
Yeah. Paul, you have a hand. I have to get used to these Zoom raising hands. I've been missing them. So go ahead, Paul.
It's like a Sunday service meeting, is it?
I know. I'm so sorry.
Well, first of all, Martha, I really enjoyed your sermon today. It was very enjoyable. We, as a family, I was born in Boston, and my father had a business opportunity in California, so the family was uprooted and we made the big trek to Santa Monica. And left behind was all the cousins, and I didn't really have a lot of grandparent influence in my life because everybody was on the East Coast. But growing up, when I first started working, I started working as a busboy at a place called the Santa Monica Beach Club. And the maitre d' there, Manuel Ramos, was an older gentleman. He was basically grandfather age. And he was a very good influence on me in terms of teaching me about being of service to others and attention to detail. But I enjoyed playing with this man. I mean, he sometimes would chase me around the dining room with a spoon saying, this isn't clean or this or that. He was a hypochondriac. So sometimes I'd come in and say, Manuel, I'm not feeling well today. I think I got a cold. And he'd say, oh, no, stay away from me. And I'd say, no. And I'd pick up like germs from my mouth and I would throw germs at this man and just and through the whole beach club. And it was just so funny chasing this 65-year-old man around the dining room. It was always a lot of fun. During high school, whenever I wanted to have a night off, because Fridays and Saturdays are very important in that world. I'd say, there's a game coming up on Friday night. I want to go to it. He'd say, no, you have to work. And I'd say, well, I really want to go. And he'd say, no. Well, I'm going. He says, no, you're not. If you go, you're fired. And I'd say, all right. And I'd go. And then the next morning, I'd get this phone call in the morning saying, oh, are you coming in today? And I said, Manuel, you fired me. He said, oh, all right. Well, you're rehired. And this is a little game we played for years. I was there for about 6.5 years, and every time I needed a night off, I'd get fired. I've never been fired more times on any job than working for the Santa Monica Beach Club. I got fired at least once a month. But it was a lot of good memories with the influence of this gentleman during my teenage years. And that's what came to mind when I was listening to the sermon today. Mm-hmm. Good times.
Yeah, that's awesome. You cannot threaten to throw your germs at someone now.
Yeah. Considered a class 1 harassment or whatever they call it.
Exactly, poor form.
This shows how far we've come. You know?
What he experienced also shows that you don't have to be related to have an experience.
That's true.
And I think those of us who were, like, I served in, education for 42 years, and there was a lot of little guys that needed just that extra little, they would come. I had kids that would come see me years after they left the school, and there would be this 6-foot-tall kid, Mrs. Singula, with a voice down here. And I had to, who is this kid? And then there was this one kid who it was in 4th grade, I think it was, who spent most of his time under his desk because he hated math. And I helped him with math. I worked with special needs kids, obviously. But he was very bright. He had attention deficit, and I think he had some kind of a disability with math. But years later, Joe was a what were you, Joe? A judge? It was at the airport where
judge
had a lot of his time, and they had a contest for kids from the community college that were in air schools, and they had to do certain things. Well, anyway, there was a dinner at the evening, and we were up near the dais because Joe was a judge. And when we walked in, they had a PowerPoint going around the perimeter of the room, showing all the young men and all the young ladies in whatever they were doing all day. And every once in a while, I'd look up and I go, "Oh, there's Tim." Tim? Anyway, his name was Tim. And I thought, Tim, boy, he sure looks a lot like Tim. Anyway, as we're going along and they're giving awards, here comes an award for whatever, and Tim Seymour. Da, 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 da. And my mouth dropped like this, and I just sort of instinctively sort of stood up to look, and here was Tim coming up the aisle, and he stopped and he saw me. I was the first one. He grabbed me. I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, he grabbed me before he went up to get his award. And his parents came later and said, we can't tell you the amount of influence that you had on this kid at 4th grade. And he went on to private boys school and on to junior college. And I don't know if he's a pilot now or what he is, but he won an award that evening. So you never know. You just never know. If you don't have to be related to have that influence.
That's right.
And that really brought that home, how important that was. And I guess that was one of the things that kept me going with all the slings and arrows of public education, was those really important contexts. And Annie really, I think it was during the time when I was reading all these selections, and it was Joe was gone on his trip, and it was during the time where during the post-election time, and there was a lot of stuff going on, and it just hit me how important that personal contact of one person is.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, Paul's story about getting fired reminds me of when I was working at the newspaper. We had this city editor that would go out, his shift would be over. He'd go out right across the street from the paper, sit down at the bar, and he would get sloshed, come back to the newspaper, and he'd fire everybody. Next morning, some of us would just sleep in late, and the phone would ring. Where are you? Well, Tom, you fired me. Get your ass in here. I got an assignment for you. So
that's my kind of guy.
Yeah, it happens all the time. But you know, when I was
planned,
my first memories were living with my grandparents, my mother's parents, because we lived with them when my dad got drafted into the Army after the war and went to Japan. And some of the things that happened on that little 5-acre farm really shaped my life for many years to come. And I had some of the most wonderful memories. Too many to go into right now.
Yeah, but you did go into some detail. You know, I mentioned it before, your service that you did for Father's Day, which is on the YouTube site. So if any of you missed it, I would encourage you to go listen because it was quite good. So yeah. Who have we not heard from? Julianne, I don't think you've said very much.
Yeah, Martha, thank you so much for finding this sermon of Annie's. I so loved her storytelling. And for those who didn't meet her, she was so very open and truly welcoming. It was not a pretense. And she always struck me, forgive me, Annie, if you hear this, but as the great mother hen with her brood around her. And then, you know, there was a stray one always wanting to run off, and she, you know, cluck cluck and get back here. And it was a warm, comforting feeling.
Well, I don't think anybody would doubt how deeply she cared for this congregation, and the amount of energy that she put in to this congregation. So yeah. So but I agree. Yeah, she did have that kind of mother hen kind of persona. So, sorry, Martha, I cut you off.
I just remember all the crazy skits that we did.
Oh yes.
You know, I'm a, you know, a thespian at heart, and we would sing and we'd do all these crazy nitwitty things, and it was such fun. But it was all, you know, was based on a concept of our faith. And I wish I had the energy to help recreate some of those, and I just couldn't do it. But of course, we also had Billy, so we really had two. We had the minister and the minister's partner who picked up all the pieces and did all the stuff. And when I had my knee done, it was Billy who came over, and she said, "You're going to go to the market." I said, "Okay," and I'm taking you. And off we go. And she would drive like a bat out of hell. I mean, I swear to goodness, if I didn't have a seatbelt on, I would have gone out the door as we went around a corner. But she was adamant that she was going to get me out and walking, which of course I was able to do. But just and they would come over and they would just be like visiting aunts and uncles. You know what I mean? They were part of the family, and it was just wonderful. I always felt, you know, we all have our foibles, and Annie had hers, which we all know. But all of the things that we remember, I think, mostly are those wonderful things that she brought to our congregation.
Yeah, Billy, Annie's partner, she replaced the door for the upstairs bathroom. And so I was coming in to work, and I see Billy like working with this very heavy door, and I'm like, oh my God, you know, let me help you. And Billy just says to me, you know, you're a gentleman, but I'm pretty butch.
And she's a big woman and a strong lady.
Yeah.
So. I wouldn't want to take her on.
Yeah.
We've got a few minutes left. Does anybody have anything else?
Well, you know, if she sees this, and if we ask really, really nice, maybe after the COVID thing is over, she just might make a trip west and speak again.
Yeah. Could happen.
Hi to Annie. Hi, Annie.
Hi, Annie. Hi, Annie. Yeah, I'd love you to come back.
Well, I would think that's not too shabby a place to end. So, Martha, unless you have anything. No,
I'm
all right.
just
Well,
really grateful for her, and I was glad to have an opportunity to share that.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you, everyone. This was a lot of fun for a Sunday morning, and we will hopefully see you all next week. Have a great day.
Yes, it's your service. Better get your
that's
greetings
true.
to me, my dear.
You got it.
Wednesday.
Take care, all.